Okay, everybody, I put a handout out on the website for this as well. These are trig ratios of quadrantal angles. Angles whose terminal arms are on either the x-axis or the y-axis. So for instance, 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, or 270 degrees. So how do you come up with the sine, cosine, and tangent values? Well, I want you to think of the terminal arm being only 1 unit long. It's positive, it's 1 unit long, it's a length. Now, that means for 0 degrees, the terminal arm is on the x-axis. Its point is at 1 and 0. Okay, the x-coordinate is 1, the y-coordinate is 0. That's the point. R is equal to 1. The sine value for 0 degrees, sine, that's y over r, isn't it? 0 over 1, which is just 0. The cosine for 0 degrees, that's x over r, 1 over 1, which works out to 1. The tangent value, that's y over x, 0 over 1, which is just 0. There's our sine and cosine and tangent values for 0 degrees. Well, what about 90 degrees? As the terminal arm rotates up, it's now on the y-axis. The point right there is 0 and 1. The sine for 90 degrees, that's y over r, 1 over 1, which is just 1. The cosine, that's 0 over 1, which is just 0. And the tangent value, that's 1 over 0. Hey, wait a second, you can't have 0 in the denominator. We say that's undefined. There is no tangent for 90 degrees. Okay, how about 180 degrees? The terminal arm is now located here. Point P is at -1 and 0. So how do we get the sine, cosine, and tangent values? Once again, sine, that's y over r. 0 over 1, which is just 0. The cosine value, that's x over r. That's -1 over 1. And -1 divided by 1 is just -1. And the tangent value, that's y over x. 0 over -1, which is just 0. So both 0 degrees and 180 degrees, they have a tangent value of 0. How about 270 degrees? The terminal arm has rotated all the way down here. It's sitting on the negative y-axis. The point on the terminal arm is 0 and -1. So our sine value, that's y over r, -1 over 1, which is -1. The cosine value, that's x over r, 0 over 1, which is just 0. And the tangent value, that's y over x, -1 over 0. Oh, that's undefined as well. So that's how we come up with those values on the chart that I sent you. We can use those to answer some of the following questions. Okay, so how do we apply this? Some angle in standard position is between 0 and 360 degrees, including 0 and 360 degrees. The tangent value of that angle is 0. We've got to come up with the angles that share between and including 0 and 360 degrees that share the same tangent value of 0. Now 0, if you write that as a fraction, because we know tangent is y over x. 0 as a fraction is 0 over any number. Let's just choose 1. Point P, that means the y coordinate is 0. And the x coordinate can be any number. It could be 1. And if that's the case, 1 and 0. If the y coordinate is 0, then we know that the terminal arm has to be on the x-axis. R is equal to 1. Well, if the terminal arm hasn't moved, then theta must be 0 degrees. Or, what if the terminal arm rotated all the way around? It would be back in the same position. It would still have a point. The point on the terminal arm would still be 1 and 0, and the length of r would be 1. So theta could also be 360 degrees. Check it with your calculator. Check the tangent value for 0 and 360 degrees. Now another point P could have been at -1 and 0. The terminal arm could be right here. be right here, where the y coordinate is 0. The length of r is 1. And point P would be at negative 1 and 0. Wow, well that angle we can see is 180 degrees. 3 answers for this question. 0 degrees, 180 degrees, 360 degrees. All 3 of them satisfy the domain here and have a tangent value of 0. Okay, here's another one for you. Theta is between 0 and 360 degrees, or could include 0 or 360 degrees. The sine value of theta is equal to negative 1. Which angle in standard position has a sine value of negative 1? Well, negative 1, if you write that as a fraction, that would be negative 1 over 1. So what do we know about point P? We know that the y coordinate is negative 1, and we know that the length of r is 1. Well, how is that possible? That's only possible if the terminal arm passes through the point 0 and negative 1. And for the terminal arm to be 1 unit long, that is the only possibility. Our angle in standard position is right there. That angle, theta, is equal to 270 degrees.